Hello, everyone. Welcome to the final session of the first part of the Eugene Review Panel, session 9. It's amazing. We've come so far. 9 sessions of 2.5 hours each. That's a lot of hours. Well, we're in the 9th session now. So this one is the final one at the end of this. Remember, we're sort of in this stage of prioritizing principles. So you've already got principles. They've already been reviewed a couple of times. The wordsmithing group has gone away last night and spent quite a while continuing to edit them. And then you're going to be doing some final edits today. Specifically, I'm going to share with you apologies here. I need to stop my screen share so I can share something else. What you're going to be doing for this session, which is this next session, which is going to be it's going to be quite a long period of time, 50 minutes or so, in small groups where you will be doing 4 different things. Your number one thing to do is review what the wordsmithing committee did, because they've made a whole bunch of changes, removed some duplicates between categories, and made a number of changes in other ways to clean things up as best they could without changing the meaning of any of the principles. Hopefully, that's the goal anyway. But they need to be reviewed by your group. And then you'll also be looking for any egregious omissions, anything that you're like, oh my gosh, no, there is a principle here that we have absolutely forgotten. It needs to be here. It is essential, 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 essential. There's already over 40 principles, so it has to be pretty essential. And I'm going to explain that here how voting is going to work and sort of what essential is going to mean in practice. You'll also be looking to see if there's any, why is this important? Any reasons why things are important that may need to be added, and identify if any of the principles are not relevant to the issue at hand, in your opinion. So some folks have asked about that, and this is the time when that's going to happen. So this will have to pass a pretty high bar as well. And let me explain what that means. So, well, let me first say that if a principle is identified by the panel as not being of relevance to this issue, that doesn't mean the principle is disappearing. It just means it's going to be put down in a bottom section of the report that's other principles. So it's not disappearing, but it won't be prioritized and ranked with the rest of them today. And what I said when I said that these things have to pass a fairly high bar in your small groups, in order for there to be any changes, over half of the group has to approve. So in a couple of groups, that's 6 people. In one of the groups, that's 5 people. But more than 50% of people in the group have to affirm, yes, we need to change that. And that applies to all of what I've just talked about. Any of these kind of changes, and this will be on screen. You'll be able to see this when you're moderators, when you go into small groups. When we come back into the large group, there will be a 2/3 majority requirement for any changes or disputes at that stage. Disputes, folks who feel that what's happened in the small group isn't right. This is sort of an additional a check. Okay, if really most of the panel thinks that group has not done right by them, fantastic. Then it'll be changed. And any principle that's marked as not relevant will need to pass through that vote no matter what. So it'll have to have 2/3 of the panel will have to agree that yeah, that one's not relevant in order for it to actually be pushed down. A fairly high bar, but there may be some things where that applies. But first, your first set of priority in this next section is to look at reviewing the wordsmithing committee's work. I just wanted to mention a couple of other things. The surveys from last time, generally pretty positive. A lot of people saying they were excited about being at this stage in the process, and I'm so happy to hear that. You have done a ton of work, and it's here. You're going to see it. It's covering many pages, and it's very soon to be sort of presented out to the whole world. And I also, I wanted to mention one thing, that just a little technical thing as well, that the categories that we had previously, I think I mentioned this last time, but they are not necessarily going to end up in the final report. We'll leave that to a decision for you at the end of the day today, in terms of whether you keep things in categories or whether you just have a list ordered by priority of all the principles sort of all together, because some things sort of overlap over categories. I want to acknowledge also just really fast that this is going to be a little bit messy today. That is always the way it is. Democracy is messy in general, but especially on a final day when things are sort of coming together and the last bits are being ironed out, it could be a little bit messy. Your moderators, I think, are prepared for moving things along fairly quickly. Another note from the surveys is that somebody mentioned that that there were a couple times when folks are kind of getting a little bit off topic. So your moderators will try to be pretty diligent and maybe, you know, it may feel a little bit harsh, but really they need to move along through to make sure all the principles are covered in the time allowed. But as much as all of us can sort of help to facilitate that, that's great. I put the time actually in the flip chart here. This next part of the session will go until 10:30. But I'll also check in with the groups just to make sure that is working. But we'll try to stick to 10:30 here if possible. All right, go for it.
Jose asked in the chat if you could just reiterate what the issue is for them to remember. So in deciding what's relevant or not, could you just say in a sentence maybe to remind everybody what the task is?
Right. So this is how the city should write code to comply with HB 2001. Yeah. And related issues. It is a little bit open, but there may still be things that don't fall into that you know, that aren't related. But it's not, you know, it's, as I said, it's a fairly high bar to sort of move things off of that. But if you think, and I know that people have mentioned, this really isn't related. This is something really different. That's okay. And if most of the panel agrees, then it'll get moved. All right, any other final questions, thoughts? We're gonna have actually 45 minutes in this group, but as I said, I will check in with you during each of these groups, and if we need to go a little longer, we will. All right, super. Actually, one other thing really fast, just because it's coming up just after the session today. Does anybody from the, well, I'll just make a note here that your outreach group had requested interviews, and I don't know if, Jeff, if you had noted, or anybody else from the group had noted whether folks had signed up this afternoon or needed to make an additional announcement about that at all?
I've already taken care of corresponding with everybody who signed up, and they received a separate email yesterday with a link for that. So we had folks sign up and took care of it. Yep.
Fabulous. Thanks so much, Kelly. Appreciate it. And now let's move into